Hi guys, this is Abarish Kumar. Moving to today's topic, the topic is translation. Okay, so I'll say how we are going to discuss the topic translation. First, we'll have an idea on central dogma of molecular biology, and then overview of transcription, RNA and its types, genetic code, introduction of translation, then steps of translation one by one in detail, then code translational modification and post translational modification. At the end, we will see the inhibitors of protein synthesis, and we'll end the session with the take home message. Starting with central dogma of molecular biology. What is the central dogma of molecular biology? So everywhere we say something is inherited in the form of gene in DNA. So how it is expressed? So they are They are made to produce proteins, and they express in the form of proteins. Okay, let us see what happens. Initially, the DNA, which is our genetic material, is transcripted to RNA. So the difference between DNA and RNA is DNA is double stranded, it is very stable. RNA is unstable and it is single stranded. So mainly the transcription involves the formation of mRNA, and this RNA is translated to proteins. This process, DNA to RNA, occurs inside the nucleus, and RNA to protein occurs in the cytoplasm. This is the central dogma of molecular biology. So there is a reversible reaction between RNA and DNA, which means RNA can also be converted into DNA with the help of an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. So this occurs in a group of viruses called retroviruses. Example, HIV virus, which causes AIDS, and also some tumor causing viruses. So they have the activity of reverse transcription. Okay. Now we'll have an idea of what transcription is, so that it will be easy to understand the transcription. So the main thing, the enzyme involved here is DNA dependent RNA polymerase. As we are going to produce RNA from DNA, the enzyme is DNA dependent RNA polymerase. When this RNA polymerase finds the initiator sequence or promoter sequence, what happens is the RNA begins to synthesize. Then, when the RNA polymerase moves along the DNA, the mRNA will be produced. Elongation process occurs. So the elongation process occurs in such a way that mRNA is synthesized in a direction from 5' to 3', where the DNA is read from the direction 3' to 5'. This is what it goes. And what factor causes initiation is, as you all know, the sigma factor. As the same, there is another factor called rho factor, which it terminates. When the rho factor is there in the DNA, RNA polymerase cannot bind further to DNA, so that the transcription process comes to an end. This is what in short about transcription. So when the RNA is synthesized at the end of termination, there is no proofreading mechanism. There are some unwanted sequences called introns present in between the mRNA. So that introns will be removed as a result of post-transcriptional modifications. See here, there are some sequences called introns, which are unwanted sequences. They are removed and exons are joined. This process is called splicing. And there is also another process called capping and polyadenylation. And polyadenylation is also called as tailing. So in the cap, in the 5' end, there is the attachment of in the 5' end, there is an attachment of 7-methyl guanosine triphosphate, and in the 3' end, there is a polyatyl or polyadenylation. Polyadenine nucleotides are attached here, so that further transcription will not occur. We have restricted it, and we have formed a mature mRNA. This is what the mature mRNA is. So now the mRNA is formed as a result of transcription. So there might be some inhibitors of this mRNA formation, mainly two inhibitors, actinomycin and mitomycin. And there is also another inhibitor, that is an antibiotic, rifampicin, which is used as a therapy for treatment of tuberculosis and leprosy. Okay. Now coming to the next topic, protein biosynthesis. After RNA is formed, it will be converted into protein. So as I said, after mature RNA is formed, it is transported to the cytoplasm where it helps in the synthesis of polypeptide chain or proteins. Okay. Before going into it, we'll have a general look on RNA. RNA is ribonucleic acid. It is of two types, coding RNA and non-coding RNA. Coding RNA is mRNA, non-coding RNA, tRNA, rRNA. A glimpse about these type of RNA. mRNA, messenger RNA, it is produced as a result of transcription, and only about 2 to 5% of total RNA is mRNA. Next, tRNA. tRNA is transfer RNA, which helps the binding of amino acids to the protein synthesizing machinery. Which is the protein synthesizing machinery? Ribosome, rRNA. So next is tRNA is soluble RNA, and it is much shorter than mRNA. So this tRNA structure is, it has a clover leaf shaped and it has 4 arms: amino acid acceptor arm, anticodon arm, and pseudouridine arm, DHU arm. There is also a variable arm, that is a short arm or long arm present in some type of RNA. And this the sequence in the anticodon arm will determine the what type of amino acid is getting attached to the an amino acid acceptor arm. This is what the structure of tRNA is. So the tRNA is transcribed from RNAP3, which means RNA polymerase 3 produces this tRNA. And the pre-tRNA, which means precursor of tRNA, is a longer molecule. So it is trimmed at both the ends, at 5' and at 3' end. At 5' end, it is removed by RNAPase, RNAsP, which is an example of ribozyme, and 3' it is attached by the nucleotide CCA. This is processing of tRNA. Then rRNA, it is ribosomal RNA. It provides the infrastructure for translation to occur, and nucleolus is the site where this RNA is. Okay, now we'll see here. This is rRNA. Here we have 2 units. What is this? First one will be larger subunit and another smaller subunit. Both has sedimentation coefficient of 60s and 40s, and as a whole we have 80s ribosome. In prokaryote it is only 70s. Now we have completed RNA, and coming to the next topic, genetic code. This has also been dealt already in detail. Now we'll see very short. So this genetic code, it refers to the nucleotide sequence on the specific mRNA, which is complementary to the sequence of nucleotides on the gene coding for that particular polypeptide. Okay. Next, by permutation combination method, 64 different codons have been determined. This genetic code has several salient features because they are universal, degenerate, they are unique, and there is another phenomenon called Hoopling phenomenon. If you see, for a particular amino acid, there are 2 different codons. These 2 codons, the first letter and second letter are the same. The third letter is different. Sometimes this third letter may be, a different letter, which means it also may be an minor basis, minor purine and pyrimidine basis. So that phenomenon is called Hoopling phenomenon. And Hoopling phenomenon is defined as the reduced stringency between the third base of the codon and complementary nucleotide in the anticodon arm is called Hoopling. Salient features: triplet codon, universal, degenerate, unambiguous, non-overlapping, non-punctuated, Hoopling, initiator and terminator codons. There are 3 codons called stop codon and a single codon, start codon. Okay. We learnt about the basics, what we require for translation. Now coming to the topic proper, translation. What is translation? As I already said, a language is being translated. So here we saw now, till now there is a genetic code. So complementary to the genetic code, we are going to synthesize the, there will be some other codes in the anticodon so that the nucleotide sequence in the anticodon determines the type of amino acid that is going to get attached. So here the 3-letter language RNA is translated to a 20-letter language called proteins or polypeptides. This is what happens in short. Okay, let us see how complicated this process is in detail. So this translation occurs in cytoplasm, and the mRNA has to be transported from nucleus, and they are translated from 5' to 3'. And polypeptide chain growth is from amino terminal to carboxy terminal. So the steps involved are, first one will be activation of amino acid, next initiation, then elongation, termination, and post-translational processing. First step, activation of amino acid. This activation of amino acid is a charging reaction, which means the tRNA and amino acid reacts to form aminoacyl tRNA. The enzyme involved here is aminoacyl tRNA synthetase. So the enzyme is selective for tRNA acceptor and the amino acid. So let us see how the reaction occurs. See, the tRNA gets attached with the amino acid to form aminoacyl tRNA with the help of an enzyme aminoacyl tRNA synthetase. The reaction is an ATP dependent process, that is ATP is hydrolysis to AMP plus phosphate. So this is what the charging of amino acid is. Now the amino acid gets activated. So okay, now we'll see how the process gets initiated. So initiation of protein synthesis. This involves 4 steps. First one will be recognition. Next one will be formation of pre-initiation complex. Third one is binding of mRNA to pre-initiation complex to 43S initiation complex. And at the last, formation of 80S ribosomal complex. Okay, we'll see how it is recognized. Recognition. So in eukaryotes, the first amino acid which is recognized is amino acid, sequence, nucleotide sequence is AUG, both in eukaryote and prokaryote. But the amino acid formed is methionine in eukaryotes and N-formyl methionine in prokaryotes. So this methionine coding nucleotide sequence is called Cossack sequence, and N-formyl methionine coding sequence, Shine-Dalgarno sequence. And for this recognition to occur, we require some initiation factors. So the initiation factors are represented by EIF. To differentiate it from prokaryotic initiation factor, we write it as EIF. It is eukaryotic initiation factor. Okay. Now, as at the end of the transcription, post-translational modifications occur at their polyadenylation occurs. That poly A tail is very important for the 40S ribosomal unit to attach to the mRNA. So what happens is the poly A tail will bind with this EIF4F. EIF4F is found in the cap of mRNA. So the poly A tail interacts with this. So this helps in the attachment of 40S ribosomal unit to 5' end of mRNA. So this IF2 GTP, where is IF2 GTP 40S ribosomal unit and methionine containing tRNA, everything together forms the pre-initiation complex. So then this pre-initiation complex binds with the 5' end at the 5' end of mRNA. So in the 5' end of mRNA, we already saw that there is a 7-methyl guanosine triphosphate. So the 5' methylated cap of mRNA also help in this binding, and this requires the hydrolysis of ATP. So after hydrolysis of ATP, initiation complex will be formed. this 4E is there, no, EAF 4E. The 4E is responsible for the binding or recognition of the mRNA cap. And this is the rate limiting step of the whole translation process. Okay, this is what happens after the initiation complex forms. What happens now is they'll be binding with 60S ribosomal unit, and now 80S ribosomal unit is formed. This is what the process of initiation is. Once again, I'll say in a short, the polyatyl is very important for the attachment of 40S ribosome to mRNA. Now what happens? The polyatyl interacts with EAF4F found in the cap of mRNA, and all they will be attached to the all they help in attachment of 40S ribosome to the 5' end of mRNA. So that pre-initiation complex will be formed. From the pre-initiation complex, they'll bind with mRNA, and here it requires the hydrolysis of ATP. So the 4E is responsible for the recognition of mRNA cap, and this this is the rate limiting step of the whole process. And at the end, this initiation complex will bind with 60S ribosomal unit, and as a whole 80S ribosomal unit will be formed, and this leads to the formation of ternary translational initiation complex. So after this, inside the ribosome, we have two sites called P site and A site. The P site is peptidyl site and A site is aminoacyl site. So P site is where the peptidyl tRNA is carried. It carries the growing amino acid chain that we'll see during the elongation process in detail. And the aminoacyl site is the site where the aminoacyl tRNA enters, and E site is also there, that is the exit site through which deacylated tRNA moves out of the ribosomal complex. So this is what the process of initiation is. Okay, now coming to elongation. Elongation process of translation, it involves 3 steps. First step is binding of aminoacyl tRNA to the A site. Next one will be peptide bond formation. Third one will be translocation of the ribosome on the mRNA. Now, first step, binding of aminoacyl tRNA to the A site. What happens? A new aminoacyl tRNA will bind to the A site. So the next codon in the mRNA will determine. The next codon in the mRNA will determine what kind of amino acid or what kind of aminoacylated tRNA enters this ribosomal complex. So for this process to occur, elongation factor 1 and GTP are required, which means energy consuming process. And after that, the amino acyl tRNA binds to the A site. So when the amino acyl tRNA comes to the A site, next what happens? Peptide bond formation occurs, which means the alpha amino acid that is entering the A site. Here there will be amino terminal because it starts with amino terminal and ends with carboxy terminal. That is the sequence of translation. So this amino terminal binds with the carboxy terminal of the amino acid present in the peptidyl tRNA or peptidyl site of peptidyl site. So now peptide bond formation occurs, and this occurs with the help of an enzyme, peptidyl transferase. So peptidyl transferase is one of the example of ribozyme. So ribozyme indicates that RNA can act as an enzyme. Okay, the formation of peptide bond with the help of peptidyl transferase. The step does not require any energy in particular. Okay, now coming to the translocation process. What happens at the point the tRNA becomes fixed at the P site, does not carry any amino acid. See, here this bonds binds forms a peptide bond so that the amino acid chain will come to the A site. So the tRNA in the P site will not have any amino acids. So that what will happen is they'll be released from the ribosome through this thing, E site, exit site. so that the amino tRNA along with the growing amino acid chain present in the A site will come to the P site. Now, as a whole, the ribosomal unit will move by a distance of 3 codons. That is what the thing is. You can easily understand in this picture. As the growing amino acid chain is here, this is free. It moves through ribosomal complex through the E site and it comes to the P site. So that now again the A site is ready for the next amino acid to enter. And this is how the elongation occurs. Okay, I hope you understand the process of elongation. The process of translocation is also an GTP dependent process. Okay. This is the same picture indicating what happens. First, amino acid tRNA enters the A site and they'll be forming the peptide bond formation occurs. This process is a GTP dependent process. Then what happens? The tRNA in the peptidyl site becomes free so that this should be removed through the exit site and it moves by a distance of 3 codons. The process of translocation. This is also a GTP dependent process to show that here 2 GTPs are involved. I'm illustrating this picture and this will help you to understand how the elongation of protein synthesis occurs. Okay. Now, energy requirements of this process is 4 ATPs and 2 for initial activation and 1 for EF1 step, another for EF2 step. EF2 occurs during translocation. EF2 comes into role during translocation. EF1 occurs during the binding of amino acid tRNA to the A site. Okay. Next is the process goes on, the elongation process. It has to come to an end. When will it come to an end? When the amino acid, when the terminator sequence is read, is found on the anticodon. So ribosome reaches the terminator codon sequence, the process get end. So when it reaches the stop codon, release factor will come here so that it will help in the release of free polypeptide chain, and at the end the ribosomal complex will dissociate. Ribosomal assembly will be dissociated separately into 60S and 40S. And free polypeptide chain will be found in the cytoplasm, and this process is also an GTP dependent process. Okay. Now the process of translation comes to an end. So everywhere we hear of the term polysomes or polyribosomes. What is that polysomes or polyribosomes, and how is this ribosomal translation differ from polyribosomal translation? That is what the next topic is. Polyribosomes. So one eukaryotic ribosomes can synthesize 5 to 6 peptide bonds per second. So when many ribosomes work on the same mRNA and simultaneously if they work, they are together called as polysomes or polyribosomes. In that case, each ribosome will be 80 to 100 nucleotides apart from each other on the mRNA. That is what the polyribosome is. So polyribosomes will be attached on the walls of endoplasmic reticulum to make it rough endoplasmic reticulum. These are the polysomes or polyribosomes. The next process is transport of proteins. We do call it as protein sorting or protein localization. Transport of proteins. What happens? From the endoplasmic or from the ribosome, the proteins are synthesized. They are transported through a transport vehicle. They are transported to the Golgi apparatus where packaging of protein occurs, and then they'll be reached to the target cell, either inside the cell membrane or outside the cell membrane. We'll see this process in detail. Proteins for external secretion, which means the proteins that are not required inside the cell, they are required outside the cell. So the first one is the secreted proteins. This process, protein sorting, protein law. Secreted proteins and plasma membrane integral proteins, membrane proteins of endoplasmic reticulum, and lysosomal enzymes. These are the type of protein which are synthesized in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And they are, they are synthesized based on the signal hypothesis. They'll be delivered to the destined compartment. We'll see what happens here is the ribosome, or what ribosome which synthesizes the protein, the secretory protein has a signal peptide that present in the amino terminal region. Now this signal peptide will help in the attachment to the endoplasmic reticulum. What happens here is a small amount of peptide chain, about 70 amino acids in length, including the signal peptide region, and they'll be synthesized, they'll be taken out, and they'll be attached to the signal recognition particle. So this signal recognition particle blocks the further site of protein synthesis. Once it reaches the endoplasmic reticulum, the block is removed, so that further protein synthesis occurs in the endoplasmic reticulum. When the signal sequence is cleaved by the signal peptidase, the protein synthesis comes to an end and they'll be transported to the lumen of endoplasmic reticulum. So this is what the signal hypothesis is. A signal hypothesis goes with. And here one more additional point is there, that is called co-translational glycosylation, which means when the protein chain is synthesized and they enter the lumen of lumen of endoplasmic reticulum, some carbohydrate molecules are attached to the protein chain with the help of some enzyme. This process is called co-translational glycosylation. Okay, this is what the proteins of external secretions are secreted. Proteins of internal secretion. Proteins of internal secretions, they are not produced in this by the process of signal sequence. They are produced by the free ribosomes present in the cytoplasm. They do not enter the lumen of endoplasmic reticulum. They'll be freely available in the cytoplasm. Now next is the correct address of destination. How do they reach the correct point where they have to be reached? Correct address of destination is reached. This occurs with the help of an the signal peptide, which is required for synthesis, is present in the amino terminal region. As the same, the protein carry an address that is specific for destination in the carboxy terminal. This helps in reaching the correct address of destination. So when this correct protein does not reach the correct place, there are some disorders or syndromes or some clinical applications for it. We'll see one by one. First one is Zellweger syndrome. Zellweger syndrome is due to defect in oxidation of very long chain fatty acids. And this, what happens is peroxisomal enzymes are not produced properly. Peroxisomal enzymes, they do not reach the correct site. And here in CNS deficiency causes neurological impairment and sometimes death in the childhood age. Another example is primary hyperoxaluria. What is this primary hyperoxaluria? It causes kidney stones in early age. This is due to the enzyme deficiency alanine glyoxylate aminotransferase. This alanine glyoxylate aminotransferase is a peroxisomal enzyme, but they are present in the mitochondria. The next one is hypercholesteremia. It is due to deficiency of transport signals. And cystic fibrosis, improper localization of proteins. Then inclusion cell disease or eye cell disease. It occurs due to non-entry of normal lysosomal enzymes. Example is mannose-6-phosphate, which is a marker enzyme of lysozyme, is absent in the lysozyme. This is what happens when proteins do not reach the correct site. Now coming to post-translational processing or post-translational modifications. What happens here is proteolytic cleavage occurs. What is this proteolytic cleavage? partial proteolysis, which means some inactive proteins, the inactive enzymes are produced, they'll be converted. Enzymes are hormone, proteinaceous and hormones are also produced in inactive form. For example, insulin is produced in the form of proinsulin. They are cleaved proteolytically to produce insulin, which is an active form. Then modification of amino acids. Covalent modification occurs by gamma carboxylation. Gamma carboxylation of glutamic acidic residues of prothrombin with the help of vitamin K. Next, hydroxylation of proline and lysine in collagen. Then phosphorylation of hydroxyl groups by kinases. Then co-translational glycosylation, as we already discussed. These are the modifications that occur at the end of post-translation. One more thing also occurs, that is acetylation and methylation. Acetylation increases transcription. Deacetylation decreases transcription. We do also same in other terms. When it is acetylated, genes are switched on. When it is deacetylated, genes are switched off. There are also examples of subunit aggregation, that is immunoglobulin, hemoglobin, and maturation of collagen. And the failure of post-translational modification will occur the many enzyme to many normal function of proteins will be denied. Okay. As we already learnt about the structure of proteins very well, we know that the protein has different structures: primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary, and quaternary. They have to be folded. So when protein is synthesized, they assume three-dimensional folding. Among them, only one will have the biological activity. So to maintain the correct spatial arrangement of the protein, these chaperones are involved. Chaperones help in the correct spatial arrangement of this folding of proteins. They attach to the nascent polypeptide chain and prevent wrong foldings. And they help in the assembly of tertiary and quaternary structures of proteins. Chaperonopathies are from chick chaperones, and they usually occur in old age. This is what happens, and now protein is completely formed, which is our motto. Now, there may be inhibitors of this protein synthesis. So, we'll see what are the inhibitors in prokaryotes as well as in eukaryotes. Antibiotics act on 70S ribosome, which means prokaryotic translation will be inhibited by antibiotics. Okay. So bacterial, we have two types of inhibitors. One is reversible inhibitors and another one is irreversible inhibitors. Before going to this, we'll see how they inhibit. Chloramphenicol, that is a main antibiotic, which will bind to 50S ribosomal unit and they'll prevent the peptide bond formation. And aminoglycosides will bind to 30S ribosomal unit and they'll impair proofreading. Tetracycline will bind to 30S ribosomal unit and they'll be block the binding of tRNAs. This is the major mechanism by which they inhibit. And we have two types: reversible inhibitors. Reversible inhibitors or the antibiotics which are bacteriostatic. Okay, that is first one is tetracycline. So tetracycline will also bind to 30S ribosomal unit and they will be preventing the attachment of amino-acyl tRNA to the A site. This is how they act. Then chloramphenicol, they will inhibit the activity of peptidyl transferase and prevent the formation of peptide bond. Erythromycin and clindamycin will prevent translocation process. Next, irreversible inhibitors, they will be bactericidal. First, this one is streptomycin and all other aminoglycosides. Aminoglycosides, how they act, I have shown already. And streptomycin, they'll be binding to 30S ribosomal unit and they'll cause impaired proofreading. So they inhibit the formation of initiation complex and total process will be inhibited. Okay. Now, how they inhibit the, how protein synthesis is inhibited in eukaryotes. Inhibitors. So mainly puromycin. This puromycin is an antibiotic, is a substance which is similar which is analogous to tyrosine attached tRNA, which gets attached to the A site of ribosome, so that incomplete peptide will be released. Next one is cycloheximide. This cycloheximide inhibits peptidyl transferase in 60S subunit. As we saw there, chloramphenicol inhibits peptidyl transferase unit. Here cycloheximide will inhibit. Next, diphtheria toxin, which is liberated by the bacteria Corynebacterium diphtheriae, causes inactivation of many elongation factors. And also we saw many inhibitors of transcription, such as rifampicin, actinomycin, and etc. They will also inhibit the translation process. So this is what the translation is. Now we will see what is the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic translation. So prokaryotes, the ribosome is 70S and eukaryotes it's 80S. And the translation occurs only after transcription is over in eukaryote, but both occur simultaneously in prokaryote. And we saw the differences of initiator sequences, AUG, formulated methionine and methionine respectively in pro and eukaryotes, and they are called a Shine-Dalton sequence and Cossack sequence. And peptide bond formation is both, they'll be catalyzed by peptidyl transferase, and post-translational only co-translational modification occurs in prokaryote. Here they have to be modified, they have to be exported also. Inhibition, just now we saw antibiotics inhibit 70S ribosome, not 80S. Here something like puromycin and cycloheximide and also diphtheria toxin will inhibit the protein synthesis in eukaryotes. Now we have come to an end of our session. So these many times we were talking about translation. This is take home message. So we'll see what happens in brief. So initially the DNA is transcribed to RNA, the RNA of different types, mRNA, tRNA, rRNA, and there is also something called a genetic code, and by permutation combination method we get 64 genetic codes for 20 amino acids, which means one amino acid can carry more than one codon. Okay, then translation, it occurs in 5 steps. The first step is activation of amino acid, which is charging of amino acid, occurs by amino acyl tRNA synthetase enzyme. It is also an ATP dependent process. Then pre-initiation complex is formed. For that, poly-A tail is very important. And then they'll be binding with the 60S ribosomal unit, and complete initiation complex will be formed. Then P site and A site assembly occurs, where the tRNA enters and the polypeptide chain is formed, and also there is an exit site. So this is what the initiation process goes with. Then elongation process. In elongation, first one, amino acyl tRNA will enter the A site, then peptide bond formation occurs, then the peptidyl tRNA is free and they'll be moving out the ribosomal complex through exit site, and now the tRNA moves through a distance, or the ribosomal complex moves through a distance of 3 bases or 3 nucleotide from 3 nucleotide distance on the mRNA, and at the end when the terminator codon is found, is read in the mRNA, the translation process comes to an end. Proteins in the releasing factor binds, ribosomal complex breaks down or dissociates, so that a free polypeptide chain is formed. So that after that we have some post-translational modifications like covalent modification, gamma carboxylation, hydroxylation, acetylation, methylation, and also there is a partial hydrolysis or proteolysis also occurs. And there are many inhibitors. Antibiotics will inhibit prokaryotic translation, and the eukaryotic translation will be inhibited by puromycin and cycloheximide and diphtheria toxin. And there is also signal hypothesis for the transport of proteins to our external or outside the cell. For internal, there is no signal hypothesis. They occur in the free ribosome that is present in the cytoplasm. So when the proteins does not reach their destined site, what happens? There are many disorders like what to say, Zellweger syndrome and etc. This is Zellweger syndrome. Then when the protein take up their structure, they'll be moving in many directions to make correct spatial arrangement. Chaperones are involved. Chaperones help in tertiary and quaternary structures. So we have ended and we have discussed the very important topic, translation, and I hope it will be useful for everyone and you all understood everything. So have a nice day. Thank you.